Welcome to the May 12th, 2020 episode of Reactive Consciousness, our in-depth podcast about what happened this week in our lives. I'm your host, vysethebold, and this is...
Lotus Prince.
And there is no one else to get between me and you this time.
Lotus Just Prince. Like old times, except for the guy you recorded with before you started recording with me. It's like old times, but not the oldest times.
Well, that was like episode 0.
We did an episode 0. You did an episode like -1.
-1. But that's okay. That's okay.
Hey, I just got an idea. Why don't we talk about PAL PS2 mods?
And like not have a really good structure, and also like just ramble on for a bit and talk about Red Hair Menelaus.
Boy, I would like to play Siren 2. And that's the entire discussion.
And it's still the case, apparently. But
it is still the case. But anyway, happy belated Mother's Day.
Yeah. Happy belated Mother's Day to all those mothers out there. I tried to add a little slang to that. It was not successful. Yeah, it was not successful.
There is in the standard lexicon.
Standard lexicon?
Yeah. Like Lex Luthor?
Who's standard lexicon?
If Lex Luthor had an icon, it would be that.
the Lex icon.
Bingo.
Well, in the DC cinematic universe, Lex Luthor came up with all the icons for the superheroes.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
They're all Lex icons.
I mean, I assume that they were already pre-established and he looked them up or something, but I really like the idea that because that's the first time you saw the icons in the movie universe, he just did that. He didn't write, weird robot guy, fast guy. He knows their superhero names and their symbols. It's the best.
Remember, Mark Zuckerberg came up with all of the symbols for the DC superheroes.
He's very good.
Well, we have another batch of great news here. Actually, a little bit later on this end this week, but that's okay. Sometimes it's just a little bit late. But this week, what we forgot to talk about last time was that there is a new Assassin's Creed that was announced, and we forgot to talk about it. It was Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and let me guess, it was a Viking-themed one.
Oh, I thought it was just modern day, New Jersey. I thought it was Mad Max Fury Road Assassin's Creed.
They would have my attention if they had a modern epic RPG set in modern day North Jersey.
No, you know what it would be? It would be like the Templars and the whatever the assassins were back then, and somehow they had a future tech future tech time machine. I wanted to say hologram, but that still makes no sense. They had a future tech time machine that when Ezio not Ezio. I mean, I guess it could be Ezio, but when Altair goes into it, sure, he appears in modern day, and that's where the real game is. It's a complete reverse.
What I want them to do is I actually want them to explore their future timeline with a modern with an action game. They haven't done that. They just have that that modern situation in cutscenes and stuff.
Yeah. Who would have guessed that Ezio would eventually come to appear in a Soul Calibur game? I bet they didn't see that one coming in their future sight.
They didn't. I don't think they collected enough feathers for that to happen quite yet. But...
I don't even know. I know nothing about Assassin's Creed. I'll take your word on whatever that is.
Oh well, the feathers are their fractions of the memories that they're collecting to make it to sync up their VR storytelling with what actually happened. But anyway. So apparently this is patterned after Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which was the first RPG Assassin's Creed game. And apparently that one was well received by fans. A welcome change up. They wanted to do something different rather than like the Prince of Persia derivative,
Yeah.
which the series was founded on. The RPG gameplay has found its footing. So maybe its second game will be even better and be more confident, that kind of thing. So I think that's cool. I don't really follow this series. I'm aware of when the releases happen, but it had a bad start. Like Assassin's Creed 1 is easily the worst game in the series, and I didn't play it because I heard it was bad, so I never got to it. And then apparently 2 is the shit, and that's where like everything stemmed off of.
Well, I heard people really liked Black Flag with the pirates.
Sure. Apparently, it's kind of like Star Wars or Star Trek in that like the even entries are really good.
Oh, okay.
So like 2's really good, 4's really good, that and so on.
Yeah.
But like like about half of them are great, and then the other half are okay. They're not bad, but they're okay. That kind of thing. But they always fascinate me because they did start off as a Prince of Persia series, and I'm a big Prince of Persia fan from back in the Sands of Time days, and I was always fascinated by this meta narrative they have, and they have so many games. It was almost like an annual franchise for a long time, but there are so many episodes that you have to play if you want to go back to this.
Did you ever play OG Prince of Persia?
You mean the 2D one?
Yeah.
I played a bit of it, but it's a really difficult game.
Yeah, I played like a couple minutes.
Yeah.
It's really clever, and the rotoscoping is gorgeous, but man, that game is rough. It's interesting because the Sands of Time, obviously, like you'd expect from the title, has a time mechanic where you can rewind a few seconds, but you have limited charges to do that. But the original Prince of Persia, the entire game is timed. You've got to beat the game within
2
however
hours.
much time it is, or you just lose.
I think it's 2 hours.
2 hours. So it's like D before D. Except Prince of Persia is a video game,
That's your
and
reference.
D is really dull even when you know what you're doing.
Prince of Persia, like one of the biggest, most influential games of all time. You're comparing to D. Like D is the reference that you're comparing it against.
Yeah, you have a 2-hour time limit, and half of that time is probably taken up by your friggin' screen transitions.
Get the hell out of here. But anyway, I think it's cool. Of course, this is a series I need to catch up on. If I was going to play them, I of course would probably watch like a movie on the events of the first game and then move on to the second one, because like apparently the first game's not worth anybody's time except in story alone.
Yeah, I heard the combat was pretty clunky in the first one.
Well, I think the big issue with the first one is that it was very repetitive. Like once, there's only like 3 types of missions, and you have to do them over and over again. That kind of thing. Like they just didn't have enough time to bake in the oven. That kind of thing. But Assassin's Creed 2 is of course like some people say that's like one of the best games of all time. That of course is worth going back to. So I don't know how it's held up in recent years, but
Assassin's Creed 2 is the Italian one when you're Ezio?
Yes.
That has like arguably the single greatest moment in video gaming history.
But your Uncle Mario.
Yeah, hey, don't you recognize me? It's me, Mario. It's like, whoa, this is like a 360 exclusive, or like maybe PS3 as well. Like that is bizarre.
Yeah, it's funny. But I've always, like I said, I've been like a sideline observer of that series. Like I like reading about it, but like I haven't like because it has so many titles in it now that like going like catching up is like almost impossible.
You gotta play a lot of games before you're ready to watch the movie.
I gotta start with the Prince of Persia with starring Jake Gyllenhaal.
Oh yeah,
then we can go on from there. And all the PSP games and all that other bullshit that they made in the series. But yeah, it's just one of those things. Moving on from that, apparently there was like a report coming out on a bunch of EA stuff. Apparently they are rooting around trying to something like 16 games in development right now. Some that they have announced and some that they haven't. But the big thing that came out of this, apparently this is verified by sources of a reporter, that Mass Effect Trilogy is being remastered, and it's in the works for the like the PS4 and the Xbox One right now, and,
Yeah, that
and
would be
probably
pretty
PC.
cool. Yeah, probably Steam. It's been on Steam forever.
Well,
The original, I mean.
I think only two of them are on Steam, something like that. Um,
That I don't know. I
if,
never really looked into it.
I think they're on Origin right now.
That's what it is.
At any rate, yeah. I think only one of the games or two of the games are on Steam. But I think the silver lining on this is, first of all, the Mass Effect original trilogy is a fantastic gaming experience. I loved it when I was going through it. I loved all three games. I think a lot of people's perception of like the way the ending went was unfortunate, because I thought it was a good experience. I really did.
Yeah, apparently the third game really is great, but like, man, they really tripped at the finish line.
Well, I think people didn't all justifiably so didn't take into consideration all the DLC, because it hadn't been out yet by the time it released.
Yeah.
But some of the DLC packs were really great send-offs to the series or to the trilogy. So at any rate, what I think would be neat is if they really went back and updated Mass Effect 1. Kind of even did like a major overhaul of Mass Effect 1 when they did this. Made it more like 2 and 3. That would be a really neat thing if they ended up doing that. I'm not going to hold my breath.
I can't wait for the remastered collection to come out as 3 different entries, and the first entry won't be on PS4 for like 10 years. And then it finally will be.
Yeah, but only the third game will be on Switch.
Yeah, some weird bullshit.
Yeah, and they wonder why it didn't do well on fucking, on Wii U. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I've been a hardcore Mass Effect fan. I've been playing it since the first game. Sure, I'll get the third one on the fucking Wii U.
Like a game who's like really like one of the biggest parts of the experience that made it really great was like the save game transition.
Yeah, it's like Shenmue, except that Americans had no fucking choice with Shenmue 2. But like with Mass Effect 3, really?
Yeah, it was bullshit, and it was way after the third game had already come out. Like, so like, why did they think that would do well? Like, why did they hinge their bets on that? So stupid. But anyway, I can only hope for that, but I'm really happy that that's the case. Also, Mass Effect 1 does not have controller support on PC as of right now.
That's bizarre, considering wasn't that
how
one
it
of the
originally
ones that
released.
was on? Yeah, I was gonna say that was one of the ones that was on Steam forever. Because I remember I didn't get it on Steam because, like, at the time my computer was a potato, and I was like, I wanted it on PS3, and it just wasn't happening for PS3 for a long time.
Yeah, I think that and Dragon Age don't have controller support yet for PC. It only exists for the consoles. So
like that's what I was just gonna say. Like, it was on 360. Like, this is a no-brainer. Just copy paste.
It was during that weird transitional period where they didn't know how to treat PC ports in relation to console ports. They were treating them separately, and they just never synced up later on. It was just one of those things. But I really hope that's what happens. But anyway, moving on from that, Ray Barnholt, who was a former member of OneUp.com when that was around, and he's also was a former co-host of Retronauts, and he's been on a ton of the podcasts that I listen to, including a modern, the current podcast No More Whoppers that he holds with his best friend Alex
Is that the
Frioli.
McDonald's podcast?
No, it's No More Whoppers. But he has a really fun podcast that isn't necessarily about video games, but it's more about his life and Alex's life. Alex lives in Japan and is married over there and deals with life as an expatriate, that kind of thing. But there is some video game talk because, of course, they both love video games in it as well. Alex actually owns a bar over in Japan that is like a video game bar. Like you go there and you can order a drink and play like Famicom games and Super Famicom
That's
games,
pretty
that
cool.
kind of thing. Yeah, it's pretty cool. But anyway, Ray a little while back made. He came out with a company called Bipedal Dog, and he released a game on mobile on Android and iOS called Blast Rush. What was cool about this game is that it was kind of an unusual shmup title, in that most of what you do is you attack enemies from the side by boosting, and like a gust of air comes out of the side of your ship, and it does damage to the bad guys that way.
Oh, so you want to boost away from the enemies to
Correct.
attack them? Okay.
Yeah, he came up with a brand new mechanic for a 2D shmup that normally is a pretty traditional type of gameplay. And it was a really fun game. You could it was free, but you could upgrade it and buy like the full version for $1 for a while. But he ended up coming out with a Steam version, which is great. You can now play it on PC. I'm very happy about that. I'm very happy anytime a game that I like is rescued from mobile, because mobile is just as much as I think it can be a decent platform. Every game that I've ever wanted on it, I've wished wasn't on there. Because mobile is very ephemeral. Eventually, like the games will be lost to time, and I just don't think it's. I think it's good for pick up and play, and then but a lot of the games are easily forgotten on mobile, and it's very unfortunate. This way, if it's on Windows, it'll have some kind of preservation associated with it. People that will want to ensure that Windows 10 games are playable in the future will have fixes for games like this and things moving forward. Plus, I want to be able to play with a controller, that kind of thing. So I thought that was great. It's called Blast Rush Classic. I think it's on sale right now, or it was, for only something like $3. I mean, why the hell not? It's a well-made game. A lot of love put into it, and it's not very pretentious or anything. It's just kind of a cool take on the shmup genre, so I thought that was pretty neat. Moving on from that, Pico Interactive announces that they have secured the rights to Rage of the Dragons, which people thought was impossible. Are you familiar with what Rage of the Dragons is? I think I've talked about it a couple times.
No, for just a second I was thinking Rise of the Dragon, but no.
No, okay. Rise of the Dragon was like a
PC,
Sega
game.
CD.
Yeah,
Exactly. So, Rage of the Dragons was a game made by a Mexican developer. There aren't too many of those, first of all. And what ended up happening was the company that made it thought they had secured the rights to make an official Double Dragon 2D fighter. that so it started off as a sequel to the Double Dragon movie, the
Yeah,
game.
that sounds familiar. Yeah.
Yeah. So Double Dragon the movie had a Neo Geo game, for the MVS AES. And so they made a sequel to that essentially, but then they were like, "Oops, we don't have the rights," so they basically just flubbed it. But all the characters are analogs to all the characters that in like the Double Dragon universe. Even to the point where the main characters are Billy and Jimmy still, but they have like different last names or something like that. It is a fan favorite beat 'em up on the Neo Geo and AES and MVS. A lot of people really like it because it's very stylish and fun to play. It's beginner friendly. So like if you were to go, if people were gonna say some of the best games, for the best 2D fighters for this system, you would hear things like Mark of Wolves. Mark of Wolves is probably the best game for that entire platform. But you'd have some cult favorites like Windjammers and things like that, and that would show up in that cult favorite section. Rage of the Dragons, though, had never gotten a home release or anything like that, and Pico Interactive has announced that they had secured the rights. Some people are saying they very much doubt that they did it correctly because apparently like one of the companies that helped make it, there were like two companies involved, like that the developer in Mexico is one of the companies, but another company helped with the design of the characters, and that company folded and became part of SNK, what SNK is right now. Some people are saying, apparently, like the maker of Oh Dear, Brendan Sheffield, Oh Dear, you remember that, right?
Of course.
He said he very much doubts that they got the SNK proper permission for it. So who knows how this will end up. Also,
maybe it'll end up exactly how the game was developed in the first place. Whoops, we don't have the rights, and they fudged the fudge, and they changed the characters again.
Well, the funny thing is, Pico Interactive is known for kind of doing things half-assed. They do some good work, but some of their work tends to be like half-assed. Like they are more known for they are known for buying up the rights for Wisdom Tree games and re-releasing them so you can buy like official reproductions of them.
Oh, those like Noah's Ark 3D. Like
exactly.
That okay.
Exactly. From their website, you could buy that right now. They're also known. I think they also have done some work in the past where they've bundled some of the games that they've gotten the rights to with like certain re-releases of consoles and things like that. Like they specialize in scooping up some old rights to old games that are barely paid attention to anymore, and then re-releasing them in some respect. However, they're not known for re-releasing them on consoles or anything like that. Like you wouldn't see anything that they came up with on let's say Switch, which is where you would want to see Rage of the Dragons, because there are tons of SNK games already on Switch. That's where you would really want to see that kind of thing. So people are kind of hesitant about this news because they're wondering whether the thing about Neo Geo stuff is that it's highly collectible and easily exploited. So some people are wondering if they're just going to reprint MVS AES cartridges and charge people like $400-$500 to rebuy this game rather than just making it accessible like anybody would want them to.
Well, that's the thing. Who are they going to sell those repros to? Like 10 people?
Well, that's the thing. There are SNK superfans that buy that kind of stuff.
There are, but like, are there enough?
There's probably like 100, honestly, but they might do that at first and then, see what happens later. I mean, they're doing the same thing with Xenocrisis, even though Xenocrisis is a great game. I actually have no problem with that, but they are making a Neo Geo version that is really expensive. It's like $300-$400, that kind of thing.
Here, a game that anyone can buy for $30-$40. We're just selling an expensive version because go fuck yourself.
Well, you underestimate the fandom.
I know that there are some people who are like, I absolutely must collect every game for XY library, but like, come on.
They're becoming less and less. So, people are really taking this news with a grain of salt for a couple of respective reasons, and I don't blame them. It is exciting because Rage of the Dragons is one of the reasons why I have a flash cartridge for my MVS converted consoleized system, my Omega. Like I really want to be able to play that game because it's a lot of fun. But it's just one of those things. So who knows how this will shake out in the end? But hopefully it's good. Hopefully they're watching and being like, okay, we need to take this seriously. Let's get it ported correctly, that kind of thing, or even make it part of the Arcade Archive series. Maybe work with Hamster and release it correctly. But I'm not going to hold my breath. Moving on from that, I did want to talk about this because I talked to you about this earlier in the week. But the MiSRer platform is getting just more and more mature as time goes on. They've added virtual light gun support to it earlier within the month, so that's something that's really cool. You can use like either a Wii remote or a mouse for I think all of the different versions of the light guns for the Genesis core, which is really neat. That's something that the Mega SG cannot do, as just for a comparison point. So you can play Snatcher with basically fake light gun support, with
rad.
the mouse or something, which is really cool. I think the Wii remote is like probably the best thing.
Yeah.
Which I think that's really neat. I'm really excited about that, but the big thing that they added recently was adaptive composite blending, which I did not expect this. So I explained this to you in a phone conversation offline, but essentially when you make a game like Sonic the Hedgehog that has Sonic the Hedgehog was made with kind of a screen trick to it because of the way that displays worked back then. Most people would have an RF connection for coax or something like that when playing Sonic 1, and the screen would be slightly blurred on your old cathode ray tube television, CRT television back then. And as a result, when you would pass through a waterfall, it would look like it was translucent, and Sonic would move through it, and it would be a really neat effect. However, nowadays we've become more and more obsessed with a really sharp picture, to the point where you either are playing it with an HDMI-enabled system like the Mega SG or the MiSRer, or you are taking RGB SCART connection from your original system and running it through something like an OSSC or a FrameMeister. And as a result, when the picture is ultra sharp like that visual trick is not accounted for in that, and it just looks like lines passing over the screen. You get the idea that it's supposed to look translucent when you play it, but it doesn't look quite the way you would want it to. Let's say. Because they were playing off of the old technology to make it look good. Everything else looks great, of course, because you have those really sharp pixels elsewhere. But what's really neat is they invented an algorithm that will take all of those scenes in which it's supposed to look like a transparency. There's one in Streets of Rage 2 that's very recognizable when you go into the bar in the first level. The lights that stream down look like that, and also Revenge of Shinobi has a waterfall scene in, I think, the second level. So they invented an algorithm which will detect that and blend only those pixels. So you can have ultra sharp, great looking, really sharp pixels for the way that you would want that elsewhere. But it will blend the pixels that are supposed to look like a transparency to make it look like a transparency, which is fan-freaking-tastic. That's really cool. So you don't have to switch back and forth between like a blended thing or whatever. It just has that feature. You can turn it on and or off, but why wouldn't you always want to leave it on? It works properly for everything that it's supposed to and doesn't affect anything else. So it's really neat. I thought that was really cool. And moving on from that, I talked to you about this too, but I forgot to put it in notes. But the guy who made the GBA Consolizer, his name's Woozle. He is actively working on a original DS HDMI out mod, like a Consolizer mod for the original DS, like the DS Fat. And I thought this was really cool, so much so that I called you up because of it.
Mm-hmm.
I could tell you were really excited about this as well. So what's neat about this is they are working on coming up with ways that this would work out well, because it's a bit complicated. It's not as easy as you may think to come up with a way to display the original DS, considering that there are multiple ways to hold your DS. Like in Hotel Dusk, for instance, you hold the original DS like a book, and you play it that way. The top screen is your left screen.
There's also Nameless Game, where you go back and forth between holding it horizontally and vertically.
Yeah. So there is a bit of work that needs to be done in considering this, but it's still really great because there really hasn't been a good solution especially officially. I think the only thing that we have is there are a handful, maybe about 12 or so games on the Wii U, and they turned out really well. Nintendo did really well with those, but they kind of gave up on them. They only released a few titles like that. It's just basically the Zelda games and the bad port of Mario 64. And very few others.
Yeah, the only other one I'm aware of off the top of my head is
Rayman
Fire
2.
Okay, but Fire Emblem, what's it called? Shadow Dragon?
Yeah, like the remake of the first game, I think is what that is. But like there are so many games on the original DS that were not accounted for. For instance, the big games that I can think of are the Dragon Quest remakes. Those were not ported up through Dragon Quest IX, which was not a remake; it was an original title for the original DS, and the Castlevania DS trilogy, which were the last official Igarashi Castlevania games. So it would be really good to be able to play these on the television, with a controller. They also haven't stated how they're going to handle touchscreen stuff or the other special gimmick features, like the microphone, but I'm sure all of that is being taken into consideration. Apparently, a whole bunch of work has been done in order to ensure that the video is displayed with the same timing and all that kind of stuff. But looks like significant strides were made by Woozle on this, so it's pretty cool. And apparently, an enclosure is being worked on by Laser Bear Industries for like a 3D printed enclosure. So I think that's really neat. Retro RGB has been commenting on that and reporting on that, so I think that's really cool. Moving on from that, Yakuza Like a Dragon, or Yakuza 7.
Yeah, this would be the... I mean, I guess they're not calling it that because it's not going to be a Kiryu game anymore. Like, Judgment was just called Judgment. It wasn't called Yakuza anything. But
Yeah.
Then again, you weren't a Yakuza. But yeah, it would have been the 7th, or number 7.
Yeah, in Japan it's just called Ryoga Gatoka 7, right? I think that's all
I don't
think that's
know,
what they call
but
that.
what amuses me is that this is the second time that America has taken the 7th game in a series and given the subtitle the original Japanese name, like Resident Evil 7 Biohazard, and now it's Yakuza Like a Dragon.
Yeah, that's true. But that's a landmark title in the series because it is an RPG game, rather straying from its roots as an action game.
Yeah, that is bizarre. I'm curious to see how that... I mean, I know the game's already out. It's been out in Japan, but I haven't seen it. So I'm curious to see how it works.
Yeah, they're kind of doing what... Or Assassin's Creed kind of kind of went and did the same thing. I think it's a good idea for them to mix up things like this because how are they going to be doing that like the action game formula forever? They can't. They need to do something different.
Well, they've evolved the gameplay mechanics and they've updated the engine multiple times and they've put it into HD. They've given you camera control and everything. They've given you new characters. They have changed things within the same genre a bunch. I don't know how the PSP games play, but the only time I can remember a significant change in gameplay was Dead Souls, which nobody cared for.
Yeah, well, this is cool. I mean, they're trying something new, and I'm okay with them doing.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing how it plays. I'm gonna get it when it comes out. Like Yakuza is one of the few exceptions I make where I just get it when it launches.
Yeah. What I found cool about this, and they were making a big deal about this online, is that they are launching on all platforms, including the Xbox, both Xbox platforms, Xbox One and Series X, all at once.
And Steam.
And Steam, yeah. So
you know what cracked me up, actually? You know that meme comic where people are proposing an idea at a boardroom and everyone suggests something, and the one guy
and
with
they
his
throw
head
the
in his
guy
hand...
out.
Yeah, so they were like,
yeah.
Okay, guys, we've brought Yakuza Kiwami 1 and 2 to Steam. What should we do next? And someone's like, Judgment. And someone goes, 7. And then the third guy's like, 3, 4, and 5. And they throw him out the window. It's so good.
Well, what's cool about this is that they've solidified that this is no longer a Sony-centric series. It is no longer launching on a Sony platform. It's going to launch on everything all at once.
Because they have always been Sony exclusives, at least at first. So this is the first time it's just simul-launching.
Yeah, so this is really neat. And this was a big thing that Microsoft was kind of plugging during their their announcements about the Series X. So I think that's really neat. Obviously, this is also a really good jumping on point because it's about a brand new character. So there are going to be references, of course, to previous adventures, but this is a good point to jump on because it doesn't have any of the baggage.
Well, we'll see, because Judgment was very, very good about existing in a vacuum. There was only, I mean, it wasn't called Yakuza, to be fair, but there was exactly one reference that I could think of to a previous game, and it didn't matter.
Yeah.
So like Yakuza 7, it's a Yakuza game, so it may have more references. You never know, but we'll see.
I think Majima does show up at some point.
Okay, well,
Something
there
like
you
that.
go.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think it's quite in a vacuum because it is a sequel. But I think they're marketing it as if it were a brand new title. Because
Well, because it
there's no.
basically is. Like, the Kiryu
Yeah.
saga is over. So, like, maybe you'll see Majima around or something, but he's not... Well, I don't know, but I doubt he's going to be, like, a recurring
He's not a main
boss like he
character or
was for
anything.
Kiryu, because he
Yeah,
doesn't
yeah.
know who the hell you are or care.
Yep, yep. I just think that's really cool, and obviously you're going to be watching this because you're a big fan of that series and have been following it for a long time.
Yeah, I can't wait until the incredibly detailed walkthrough with, like, 1,000 different tabs I'll have to open on side quests, mini games, and shit comes up. I'll be using that.
Well, apparently there are even some like Dragon Quest references and things like that, so that's kind of
Yeah,
cute.
there was one Yakuza game, I forgot what it was. Maybe like Zero, because it was in the 80s or something, but like one of the sub stories you had to do, well, didn't have to, but one of the sub stories was someone was waiting for some game to come out and they were getting all hyped about it, but then somebody stole it and you have to go get it back. And I think it was implied that that was like the new Dragon Quest game at the time.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's a huge part of the that's a huge part of Japanese pop culture and
Yeah, I
gaming
was gonna
culture.
mention, like, as obsessed as Americans get with certain games, Dragon Quest is like the day. Like, aren't there like days off of work like for when Dragon Quest launches? It's something that like affects the economy directly. Like when it launches.
They started releasing it on Sunday just to
That's what it
play
was. Yeah,
nicely.
because
Yeah.
it's like America. Like when like, I mean, not so much now, but when like the Star Wars prequels, like when Episode 1 came out, like everything
That
stopped.
was a
Like a
big deal.
new Star Wars movie. Like, no one knew the meme that it would become, but like people grew up on the original trilogy. They're doing another one. Like the hype was freaking crazy. So like with Japan, it's probably even more intense for Dragon Quest games, especially because they're largely consistently good, and 11 just killed.
11 might be one of the best RPGs of all time. Like, only with time can you really say something like that, but I don't think there's going to be much debate. It's that good. It has the right blend of like nostalgia, but also just being really damn good on its own. You could play just 11 and just be satisfied with that. You don't need to play any of the
Well, yeah,
other
they're
Dragon
not they're not
Quests.
sequels, are they? Do they even allude to previous games?
So, 1, 2, and 3 are a trilogy.
Okay.
4, 5, and 6 are a trilogy. None of the other ones are related other than like themes.
Okay.
Like
Okay.
the enemies show up that are the same, the slimes,
Oh,
that kind of
sure,
thing.
sure, sure. Okay.
Um,
So it's
but
not like Yakuza where like every game is related.
So 11 alludes to a past hero that defeated the evil that is menacing the world of
Okay.
11.
Fair enough.
But they give him a name that is slightly different than the original like Hero of Legends name in the third game.
Do they actually have real names? I thought their names were just like 1, 2, 3. Like you were kind of supposed to name them yourself.
So every main character in the series does not have a canonical name except for the hero of 3,
Okay.
and it's more like he was given a title.
Okay. Because I remember in Smash, it's like the hero.
So in Dragon Quest 1 and 2, they refer to a past character that had never been seen or played as, obviously because it's 1 and 2. Named Loto in the original in the Japanese, or Erdrick in the in the North American releases. In the third game, you name a character and all that, and you move forward and you beat the game, and at the end of the game, the king tells you that you have now been dubbed Loto or Edric.
Oh, that's
Because of
interesting.
your deeds. So the third game is supposed to be a prequel, but you
Okay.
didn't know it. So it's supposed to mean a lot to the people who played the first two games,
Yeah, well,
because they were
that
like,
makes me
"Oh
think of
shit."
that makes me think of like Halo in that like I forgot which game does it, but the lore alludes to some bad event that happened in Reach,
Yeah, the Fall of
and,
Reach. Yeah,
and then Halo Reach comes out, and you're like, okay,
yeah. So in 11, you play as like a reincarnation of Erdwin. Erdwin, not Erdrick. So Erdwin, though, is definitely like almost exactly Erdrick.
okay,
But they wanted to distance it, I guess, from the original series enough to say that it wasn't the same exact character, but
sure.
a similar character who did similar things. I don't know the motivation behind that, other than maybe they didn't want it to have baggage.
Well, yeah, that's what I was gonna
Yeah,
guess, is to not alienate newcomers.
exactly. But anybody who knows who knows anything about the lore of Dragon Quest, they would know that it's making a reference to it, at
Sure,
least. But what's funny is that is the title that character receives, not his name. In
sure,
fact,
sure.
when you go back and you play Dragon Quest 3 on Famicom, or even if you play it on Switch nowadays, they remade the first three games. I tried to put in my name because I knew this. I tried to put my name as Loto, and it says you can't name yourself that.
Oh, you know what that reminds me of actually? I mean, I'm not this far in the series, but I was looking up like naming conventions for Suikoden, and apparently in Suikoden 2, if you name your character the same thing you named the different character you play as in Suikoden 1, if you have data that transfers over, the Suikoden 1 character's like retainer has a chance of meeting you. And if
Uh-huh.
he does, he's like, "Oh wow, what a coincidence! You're named the same as the other guy." It's like this kind of cute little thing.
Yeah. So, but anyway, 11 is just a fan freaking tastic game. It is so much fun to play, and it has a ton of content. So,
Sure.
it's one of those games like if you don't like that, you don't like RPGs. Like it's that good. Like it is classical, but at the same time, like it has so many new things that make it good and fun to play.
Yeah, for a Japanese game series, the aesthetic is extremely Western.
Yeah, other than the Toriyama art,
Well,
of course.
okay, yeah.
Yeah. But like I said, if you don't like Final Fantasy VII Remake and you don't like Dragon Quest XI, you don't like RPGs.
Well, what if I don't give a damn about the Final Fantasy VII remake? Dragon Quest looks interesting, but I won't be playing it.
Well, I'm just saying that's up to personal taste. But I'm saying if you just don't like it, then you don't like Japanese RPGs. It's just straight up. But anyway, moving on from that, Halo Master Chief Collection has been adding games slowly to the PC version, and Halo 2 was just added to it, so that's really cool.
Yeah, that'll make people
Halo,
happy. That's like the most popular one.
well, three
Yeah,
three is really
three
popular.
also. Three was huge,
Yeah,
and it was the first HD one.
yeah. Three is really popular, and Halo Reach had probably the most refined multiplayer because it was the last one that Bungie made. They're all
Before Bungie switched over to developing Oni 2, as we all know.
actually Destiny, but okay.
Oh, not oh, they didn't make Oni 2. Everyone was clamoring for an Oni 2. I can't believe they didn't do it.
Ugh, no.
I actually beat Oni. The game's okay.
I'm good, man. You can go ahead and play that all you want.
I did. It's over.
play it again.
Nah.
So this is really cool. So I am a big fan of the Goemon series. I have never beaten any of them, but I really respect the series, and I played a bunch of several of the games.
Yeah,
But
I think I've dabbled a little bit with the Super Nintendo one, but I've beaten the first N64 one because
that's a fun
our
game.
friend Luminaire had it. It's basically like low budget Zelda. It's like it's like or not low budget, but like poor man Zelda. But the
Hmm.
humor is like legitimately laugh out loud funny at points.
It's really good. These games are really, really great, but they made so a lot of people don't realize this, but the original Goemon game actually was called Mr. Goemon, and it came out in arcades. But then after that, the series really got its start to what it became on the Famicom. They had kind of like River City Ransom style games. Uh, so the second game on the Famicom was just fan translated. We talked a little bit a while back of the Super Nintendo Ganbare Goemon
Yeah, yeah.
2 and 3 being translated.
And
Uh,
honestly, even the Super Nintendo games, like they go in different directions, but the overworld still kind of has that River City Ransom feel.
yeah, yeah, and they just get better over time, like and more and crazier and
And
crazier.
also funny and
Yeah.
very clever with their designs.
So sooner or later, almost all the games have a translation of some sort. We have the Game Boy game was always officially translated, and we had the first Super Nintendo game and the two N64 games, but we had a whole bunch of games missing. I think
Yeah, are there was like 20 games or something? There's like a
there
lot.
there are 4 games on the Famicom, if I remember. There are 2 of the River City Ransom style games, and then there are like 2 straight up RPGs. Um,
Weren't the Famicom ones where Goemon himself was like the old style like Edo painting of Goemon?
no, Mr. Goemon would be that for
Okay,
the
okay.
arcade game, but he looks more like his modern
Yeah, modern
incarnation.
self.
The only thing that is strikingly different about him is that his hair is black, not purple, like he is in
Or yeah, like
later,
bluish. Yeah.
yeah, in his later incarnations. But he's starting to look like you know who he is.
But does he
The
have a giant mech with a theme song
no,
sung by the Dragon Ball Z guy?
no, that doesn't happen until I think
Yeah,
three.
N64.
Well, the mech doesn't show up until the 4th game
Oh,
on
the mech
Super
itself.
Famicom.
Okay. Because
Yeah,
yeah, on N64, it's got a full theme song that they do every time, and
it's amazing.
it's infrequent enough that it doesn't get old. It's just like it's part. I think it's honestly part of the joke that they
Yeah.
just do the whole thing again.
Well, this is great because this is a great series that and it's a really good game series that had been overlooked for a really long time. So I'm certainly glad about that. Moving on.
Oh, by the way,
Um,
just to bring one thing back, Ganbare. Do you know what that means?
let's go.
Yeah, I think it also might have a connotation of like cheering somebody on, like you can do it or something like that.
Yeah, yeah, you can do it. Let's go. It would be like what a cheer squad would say to you.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah. So you are correct. It's like go for it or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. Do the thing. Um, moving on from that, Bloodstained got its first really major content update on Friday, I believe. It was the 7th, so that was Friday, I think.
No,
Or
that would
no,
be
Thursday.
Thursday. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is really great. So Zangetsu is finally a playable character. So Zangetsu is, of course, the samurai looking character as voiced by David Hayter, the voice of Solid Snake. He is a really cool character, so I want to get a chance to play as him, but I haven't gotten a chance to play it.
But does
Also,
Bloodstain have a live action interview with David Hayter, the actor?
and then completely drops him for the next title
Yeah,
mysteriously.
what the fuck?
You pay super special attention to him, and then you just totally drop him. Like, what the fuck? But that's Kojima for you. But anyway, um, this is really cool because he is a cool character. He has a cool design, and playing as a character that's voiced by David Hayter is pretty great. And also the randomizer was added to the game for PC, PS4, and Xbox One. The randomizer is the mode that replaces the promised. They were going to come up with like a roguelike mode, but they decided that it was too difficult of a job, and I completely understand for like an existing game to have that feature added. It's one of those things like if they're going to make a roguelike, it has to be its own game, and it has to have its own updates and all that other crap. It can't be a special feature of an existing game because as you can see with like all of the best roguelites, you have like Rogue Legacy, Enter the Gungeon, Binding of Isaac, of course. All of those, yes, all of those games have had tons of updates and tons of content added, but also lots of balancing that needs to be done and bug issues that need to be ironed out and all that other stuff. A lot of special care needs to be put in to make those modes playable. So they decided, we'll just have a randomizer, so it just places the levels, the rooms in funky places, just as a special feature. And I can understand that. If they want to do a roguelike or a roguelite, they should just come up with a whole separate game for that. But they have also promised that Switch, I believe, is coming out. The Switch version is coming out at the end of the month, which isn't too far behind. And good on them for working on that to make sure that that mode is correct, because this whole time they have been kind of they have been paying special attention to make sure that the Switch version of the game was improved upon and made better, which they made good on. Apparently, the Switch version of the game is extremely playable right now. It's a great version of the game. It doesn't feel like it's a compromised version at all at this point. But this is something that they wanted to make sure. So I think they wanted to make sure that these extra modes worked well right off the bat, so they didn't have to apologize again. So good on them, because they've handled that really well. So I think that's all I really wanted to bring up for this week. How about you, Lotus? Do you have any extra items that you wanted to go over?
Well, there is one more thing. It's even in the notes we could bring up really quickly, which is the Mortal Kombat 11 update.
Oh, yeah, I forgot it. Yeah.
They're getting a new character, RoboCop, which is just kind of funny.
Amazing.
And also just a whole expansion to the game. What is it called? Aftermath?
Yeah, I believe so. So this is like one of the first times that I think it's the only time that I've ever seen this happen, where they added like a whole new like campaign.
Yeah, I don't believe that's ever happened, because
to a fighting game.
The days of DLC started with Mortal Kombat 9, so all that really is there is Mortal Kombat 9 and 10, and they did not have a big campaign thing added. So this is the first. It has to be.
Well, what's really cool is the NetherRealm fighting games, which would be Mortal Kombat and Injustice, are really the only fighting games that focus on story way more than any other fighting games out there. And to their to their benefit. Like their storylines are a lot of fun. Their voice acting's always really great, and they have some really fun writing.
Speaking of which, I want to see what interactions RoboCop has with whatever other characters.
Yeah, I think one of his fatalities is he brings out like the data spike and
Yeah, the
like
spike
shoves
from
it
his
through their head.
fist.
Yeah, it's really
Yeah,
cool.
I mean that was literally a fatality in
the
the
movie.
movie.
Yeah.
Why not? Oh, you
he's
know
a really
what?
good fit too.
Do you think they're gonna do the stupid jetpack from RoboCop 3 as like a wink? We
I
know
don't
that
know.
movie exists. We're sorry.
But what's really cool about this is there hasn't been a RoboCop versus Terminator game in a very long time, and we have that again now.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right, because that game was on like what, the Super Nintendo or something?
And Genesis, yeah. So it was originally a Dark Horse comic series, and then they made those 16-bit games after this. But I think that's really great.
Beaten that game with codes on the Genesis.
It's a difficult game, but
it's bullshit. Like even with invincibility, you have to button mash like you would not believe for the final boss.
They're fun, but they're not like the best games in the world.
Well, they're conceptually fun. Like it gets frustrating real quick.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a lot of Western developed games from that era. They're just like they're fun to play for a little bit, and then they grow stale.
Yeah, like Alien versus Predator, same thing. Like this game's what an idea, and then you just get your ass kicked in level 3 or 4 or something. Like, all right.
Yeah. So this will be cool. Maybe hopefully they'll have some callbacks. They've always been really good about that sort of thing. Anyway,
they can mention Genesis and reference both Terminator and the video game.
Yeah, I'm excited. I mean, I think ever since what was it? Ever since Mortal Kombat 9, they've had guest characters like this, and it's always been really neat.
I'm trying to think of previous
they did
games
Freddy Krueger.
but I think it is just 9. Yeah, 9 had Freddy Krueger, and
Did they do the Xenomorph at some point?
They had Xenomorph.
Yeah.
There was Leatherface. There was Jason.
Yeah, that's right. Jason's in the current game, I think, too, right? Isn't he?
Well, each character's only appeared once, so if it's the current game, then okay. Then I guess it's the current. I thought it was 10.
Okay, you're probably right.
Because I don't know what's going on with the current game because I haven't bought it yet because they don't have a complete edition.
Yeah. The Ninja Turtles were added to Injustice, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, that is brilliant.
Yeah, that is something nobody expected.
Yeah,
and they made that happen. I guess it doesn't hurt that Ninja Turtles are owned by the same parent company now. But it was something that you wouldn't normally think would happen.
What? Really? Yeah, that was a great idea.
Yeah, because Ninja Turtles are owned by Nickelodeon, which is a Viacom company, which is also part of like the WB.
Yeah, and it's also cool because they could be a little darker in Injustice, but not like ultra violent in Mortal Kombat.
Yeah, they're not going to have fatalities in Injustice. That's something that Injustice doesn't have.
The funny thing is, in the comics, it totally would have, like the old comics.
Oh yeah, for sure. They cut Shredder in half in like the second issue or something like that.
Yeah, he died real quick, and I remember just it showed like some foot soldier getting like a shuriken in his head. It's just like, whoa, is this really Ninja Turtles? And it turns out that yes, it's the OG Ninja Turtles.
Yeah, no, they were excessively violent. I think
and
that was like
that
part
was
of the
joke.
Yeah. But it's pretty cool that they do these kinds of things, and they always handle it really well. I mean, they added Joker to the current game 11. They added Joker to 11, which is really cool. Callback to Mortal Kombat 8, which is basically Mortal Kombat versus DC.
Well, that's the thing. Joker in 11 is kind of funny. Well, Joker was also an Injustice, but Joker in 11's pretty good because in Mortal Kombat 9, one of Shang Tsung's fatalities was he turned into a clown and just did the Joker fatality from Mortal Kombat versus DC, so it's like a callback to a callback.
Well, it was well known that DC would not allow any of their characters to perform fatalities or have a fatality done against them. They would have like a brutality or whatever,
heroic brutality where they just punch the shit out of you and there's no blood. It's like
exactly.
It's like Sega, or no, it's like Super Nintendo Mortal Kombat 1, or like Sega Genesis with no code Mortal Kombat 1.
Yeah. So they notably made one single exception to that rule, and it was Joker.
Yeah, he just shoots you with a gun.
Yeah. So he has his own fatalities, and you can perform fatalities on him in the Marvel or the DC versus Mortal Kombat game. So they added him back in because he fits
Why
right
not?
back in.
Yeah, he does the crowbar thing in Injustice. Like, he's brutal. By the
Yeah.
way, I think I might have mentioned this a long time ago, like over a year. But you know how in Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, there's Sigma, there's Ultron, there's Ultron Sigma. What a terrifying villain. He's both. Do you know what the villain was for Mortal Kombat versus DC?
Mortal Kombat versus DC. No,
I,
I
I
don't
haven't
know.
actually seen him, but it's like the scariest concept.
What's that?
Shao Kahn plus Darkseid, Dark Khan.
They
Fuck
wouldn't
that, you
get
don't want
along
to
at
fight
all.
that.
They wouldn't get along well at all.
Well, I mean, yeah, neither of them get along with anybody. It's like, I'm taking over
Exactly.
worlds.
Yeah. But I think that's really great. I mean, what else do you have currently? I think the Predator was added to one of the games.
Oh, that sounds right, yeah.
So, but anyway, they have Terminator. And
Yes.
Sarah Connor. Is Sarah Connor's also in the current
She might have
game?
been.
Yeah.
You know who they need to add? And, like,
Who's that?
I'm actually serious. It's kind of a joke because it's not mainstream enough, but they need to add Pumpkinhead because he's fucking awesome. Pumpkinhead's great.
Yeah, let me check what the current ones are because
Oh, there's Spawn,
yeah
fresh
wait
out of Soul Calibur 2.
so they added Combat Pack has Joker, Nightwolf, Shang Tsung,
Oh, Nightwolf, yeah. Okay.
Sindel, Spawn, and Terminator. Okay. Um
Yeah, those are solid
and
classic characters and interesting guests.
yeah, Spawn is a cool character to add to this. And Aftermath has Fujin,
Fujin from Mortal Kombat 4.
yep.
Alright.
RoboCop and Shiva. Shiva is also being added
Oh,
to this. I
Shiva.
forgot. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And for anyone who doesn't remember, Shiva is not Goro.
Yeah, she is the boss
she's
of Mortal Kombat 2, I think, right?
No, she's not the boss of anything. She's a playable
Oh,
character in 3.
okay. Gotcha.
She's like, can I play as Goro? Can I play as Kintaro? No, but you can play as Shiva. Goro wasn't playable until I'm not 100% about 4. Maybe one of the versions of Mortal Kombat Trilogy or something, or maybe it was 4. Like it's surprisingly hard to find a game where you could actually play as Goro. Although in MK Armageddon you could play as everybody.
Yeah, you could play as everybody in that game, but
I mean,
to its
literally everybody.
detriment. To its detriment, though, like
No, I liked it. It's just that they butchered Motaro and they made him a biped.
Oh yeah, like yeah, but didn't they in Armageddon they like all the characters were very samey in that?
No, but the fatalities absolutely were. They were like button combinations where they were all basically the same. Nobody had really unique fatalities, which was very disappointing because it's like one of the main reasons you play the game.
Gotcha. So I was right about this. In Mortal Kombat 10, it was Jason Voorhees and Predator.
So I was right about Jason. Predator. I forgot Predator was in 10 actually, and I played 10.
And the Xenomorph later on, and
Yeah, you gotta have
Leatherface.
Alien and Predator. Yep, Leatherface. Yep.
And what was it? Mortal Kombat, which was Mortal Kombat 9.
Yeah, Freddy Krueger was in 9.
Freddy Krueger. Yeah.
That was a
the,
strange one too, because like
he was the first guest character.
yeah, that was the whole thing,
Yeah.
and it wasn't like another video game. It was like a movie, Nightmare on Elm Street, like Freddy Krueger, and everyone was like, "That I didn't know there was an option." So everyone was getting all excited about horror movie characters in 10 and 11.
What's disappointing is that you couldn't do a Freddy versus Jason because they were in different games.
That's true. That's true.
But you could do Alien versus Predator,
Yes.
which is cool. Well, I think that pretty much wraps it up for
Yeah.
this week. What do you think here, Lotus?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay. That is the show for this week. Please remember to subscribe to the Corrective Consciousness YouTube and SoundCloud pages. While there, please give us a thumbs ups, likes, and 5-star ratings on iTunes. Helps spread awareness of the show, and any bit of encouragement helps keep the show going. You can also catch us on Thursday for our sister podcast, Corrective Consciousness, where we will do a profile on one of our favorite developers from software. Finally, you can friend me as vysethebold on pretty much anything.
And you could follow me on my YouTube channel, Lotus Prince. You can hit me up on Twitter at Lotus Prince. And finally, if you are interested in seeing my videos early, getting in on exclusive live streams, selecting upcoming games for me to Let's Play, or getting in conversations with me and other patrons on Discord, then perhaps consider swinging by my Patreon accounts, which can be found at patreon.com/lotusprince.
Alrighty, well, we'll catch everybody on Thursday for that profile on From Software. We'll catch then.
Until next time, everyone.
Bye-bye.